Good morning, and on behalf of my colleague, thank you for the great privilege and the high honour to address members of the European Parliament. We come here today to share with you aspects of the Australian experience, a very painful experience, but one where there are lessons to be learned. By way of background, as most of you will be aware, Australia is a highly developed country. We are a member of the G20. We have a highly developed economy. We have a robust and independent judiciary, a constitution, rule of law, a robustly independent media. But despite all of that, what we have experienced in Australia over the last couple of years is what I would call a financial regulatory crisis. The level of misconduct in the financial industry in Australia beggars belief. By some estimates, 54% of the Australian population has suffered damage due to the criminality that has become rife in our financial industry. And even though Australia has a population of only 24 million people, the extent of the damage is estimated at in excess of $200 billion. The types of misconduct that were committed were not only egregious, not only were they done at great scale, but they were done in full view and at times with the collusion of our supervisors. So in 2019, we had a Royal Commission of Inquiry. I was one of the first academics in Australia to call for a Royal Commission into our financial industry, and I supported that call longer and more consistently than any other academic. And when the results of that Royal Commission of Inquiry became known, the extent of misconduct in the Australian financial industry was simply beyond what we could easily conceptualise. In fact, late last year I had contact with an official at the Bank of Russia. I stress those contacts ceased the moment that Russia invaded Ukraine, but the official in question asked me to give him some explanation of what had happened in Australia. And when I did so, he said to me, "Wow, we don't even see this in Russia. Selling life insurance policies to dead people, charging financial advice fees to dead people, and all of this done in full view of the regulators, the supervisors." And our Royal Commission of Inquiry found that our supervisors are thoroughly captured by industry, and a very core component of that capture is the revolving door. So I was invited by the Royal Commission to make a submission, and my submission was that we needed an independent, standalone body to supervise our supervisors, to use the expression that Professor Alamano used, to guard the guardians. And this is what we hope to contribute today. We believe that we might be able to supplement the very important and valuable and insightful contribution that Professor Alamano has made in his paper towards an EU ethics body. In particular, we asked ourselves the question, how can we prevent this oversight body from itself becoming captured, from itself becoming prey to the revolving door? And this is the period, this is the point at which we hope to make a contribution. But before I get into that, let me say to you, my recommendation to the Royal Commission that such an oversight body be established was accepted by the Royal Commission. That was later reflected in legislation put before the Australian Parliament, which has now been enacted, the Financial Regulator Assessment Authority Act. And along with my colleague, Dr Schmulow, we analysed the legislation to look at it from the perspective of how to prevent an oversight body from itself revolving. And we made some recommendations, and we are pleased to say that at least one of those recommendations was adopted. In terms of the importance of this exercise, let me say to you, and here I echo the points that my esteemed colleague Professor Alamano made. It is so important that this issue be addressed, because if it is not addressed, it will continue to lead to a dissolution in the trust that the population has in EU institutions. damage the EU project. It will lead to disappointment in what the EU represents and a fraying of the EU boundaries. It is important because to tackle the revolving door is to reinforce the fact that supervisors need to honour a particular ethos, that they are there to serve the public good. And whilst it is true that they should be given the opportunity to pursue other career directions, it must also be true that the supervisory body must be seen as a destination, not a stepping stone. Supervisors who are not willing to engage in that level of commitment, I would argue, are not right for the job. Yes, they won't earn as much money, but there are people who are willing to earn less in order to serve the public good. And public prosecutors are a typical example of this. If you don't tackle a revolving door, the consequence is that you leave those people in your supervisory agencies who are willing to do their job well, you leave them disappointed, demoralised and dispirited. They see how people who are their colleagues are not doing their jobs properly, but are being rewarded with lucrative careers elsewhere. And it leads to a damaging of the esprit de corps in those supervisory agencies. It leads to people who are willing to do their job saying, why do I bother? Why don't I just go ahead and get on the gravy train like everybody else? And this really hollows out the project, not only of greater EU integration, but of an EU that is ethical and an EU that represents a counterpoint to what we have elsewhere in the world. And this is the point where I want to say to members of the European Parliament, this is a project that is not just important for you, it's important for us. We need to live in a world that is not simply a unipolar world or a bipolar world, whether it's either only the United States of America or the United States of America and China. We need a third way. We need to see an example set by the European Union of a more civilized approach to the governance of people. And so when it came to the establishment of this new oversight body, the Financial Regulator Assessment Authority, we looked at a number of key aspects of what can insulate that body from capture, and we teamed up with an organizational psychologist, and we came to a number of important conclusions. And I'm going to address one of them, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Dr Schmulow. And the aspect that I want to mention is very much a legal problem, and that is, how do you prevent members of that oversight authority from engaging in conflicts of interest? And that's not easy to do, because you can't come up with a finite list of the types of conflicts of interest that they must declare. So our solution is to say to them, if you are to be on this oversight authority, then you are under a positive duty to make an attestation that there are no conflicts of interest of which you are aware, and then to frame conflicts of interest not as a prescriptive black letter law, rules-based exercise, but as a principles-based, outcomes-determined regulatory exercise, where we frame it in broad terms to say, any conflicts of interest that you can foresee will damage your capability to adjudicate matters in an independent fashion, you are under a positive duty to declare. And then leave it to the fourth estate, to the media, to determine whether they have done so honestly. There are a number of other key aspects, and in that regard I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Schmulow.